Welcome to the Senate Labor Committee. Today is Thursday, January 30th, 2025. We have a quorum. We will start with Senate File 560. Senator Dornick, to your bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senate File 560 is a bill that would require the Commissioner of Labor and Industry to establish a cost per square foot valuation of residential building for the purpose of setting a building permit fees. And so what the goal is in this bill is we have increased costs of housing, and home ownership is getting out of reach for many, and we all have the same goal. We want to make it more affordable. Now, there's many different areas that we need to address. This is one small one that has been talked about, but it's important. So our goal is, one, we want to make home ownership more affordable and come up with solutions to solve that. Now, again, this is just one idea. And we also want to make a standard fee by the square foot price, and we definitely want to find a fair, reasonable, and transparent way to come to this goal. And this, as I've got this bill and kind of worked through it, it's been around for a while. The conversation's been going. So with the examples that I've seen in permits, there is a variation that's kind of large sometimes. I've just got a couple examples. For a $425,000 house, approximately now. In one municipality had about a $7,000 for the permit fee, which includes the review, state surcharge, footing and foundation, and then your inspections that would be required. And the other one was $4,500. So there was a $2,500 difference. So just trying to find out some of those questions, why. And so this is going to be informative, getting ideas out there. Again, our goal is to come up with some ideas that if this one isn't the best one, to help have home ownership more affordable. So with that, Mr. Chair, I know there's some testifiers that want to speak to the bill, so thank you.
Thank you, Senator Dornick. And members, just so you're aware, this bill, the plan is to pass it from committee here without recommendation because the Housing Committee would like to hear it. So we'll be passing it to Housing without recommendation from this committee is the current plan. We have 3 testifiers that are on the list. And are you ready for us to go to?
Yeah, well, Mr. Chair, I was just going to make one point that I didn't remember. So there is an amendment. It's an A1 amendment, but we're going to talk about it. This is a bill that Senator Lucero's bill. He's the author, so I'm presenting for him. And so he is in housing. So we're going to talk about and discuss the A1, but we're not going to attach it or vote on it. So we just want to, we do want that in the conversation, though.
Okay, and I was told it's the A2 amendment.
Oh, they switched. Yeah, that's right. They had technical changes.
Do you want to go to our testifiers first, or do you want to explain that so that it's just part of the conversation in general?
Yeah, I don't have the A2 in front of me, but basically the A2 is a different way so it'd be, the plan review would be set by hourly rate, not to exceed the per hour amount, so they'd have an hourly rate. The inspection and reinspection flat fee would be a cost per trip, and then the fees established by the municipality under the subdivision are intended to defer cost. And they also want to have the plan review and inspection must be fair, reasonable, and proportionate. And the other part is that the building and permit inspection fee would be available to the public, whether it's posted on a website, providing copy by mail. So that's kind of the amendment, the A2 amendment.
All right, thank you, Senator Dornick. So members, that amendment is in your packet. Again, so if, we do not intend to move on that amendment, but if you wish to have discussion around it, that is welcome here. So we will move to our testifiers. First up, we have Nick Erickson. Please identify yourself for the record, and you may begin.
Good afternoon, members of the committee, Mr. Chair. My name is Nick Erickson. I'm Senior Director of Housing Policy for Housing First Minnesota. Our members are the home builders, remodelers, developers, and trade partners who build the communities and places that we all call home. And our organization is driven in our mission of home ownership opportunities for all Minnesotans. And I want to start first by saying this conversation takes place in the backdrop of a housing shortage that really is a result of a system that is not able to currently deliver affordably priced homes, particularly the starter homes in Minnesota's home market. Today, we have a statewide median new home price of about $540,000, which is 25% above the nation's median new home price. We have a 100,000 home shortage here in Minnesota, 75% of which is here in the Twin Cities Metro. And just this past week, we learned that Minnesota permitted fewer homes and apartments in 2024 than any time since 2016, and that our permits are down 43% since just 2021. All of this is just to say that there is no room for inefficiencies in the system, and that any and all affordability challenges are holding back the market from stabilizing the market with an adequate number of homes and apartments. Also want to note, as Senator Dornick said, that this alone will not solve the state's housing affordability challenges. However, it is a critical piece to the puzzle because across 36 areas where Minnesota is an outlier, we have to reform our state and local policies to ensure that we're able to deliver the needed housing in our state. Now, I've been working on this issue since 2018, since whistleblowers, building officials, a planning commission member, a city council member had brought this to Housing First Minnesota and a couple of legislators. I've spent a lot of time researching this. I've even served on a state task force examining this issue. On that topic, I can tell you a few things. Senator Dornick is right. Building permit fees already in state law must be of legal means, fair, reasonable, and proportionate to the cost at which they are proposed. The Department of Labor and Industry, and this part is extremely important to the conversation, has given guidance to cities that building permit fees are not allowed to be part of the city's general fund, to be used them to raise monies for the general fund, nor can they be used to undertake any special projects or purposes within the city. However, just a few examples, we have seen that building permit fees are being used to boost cities' revenue stabilization funds, long-term planning funds, and in the case of Corcoran, were earmarked to remodel the city hall. After that was disclosed, the city changed its tune and put the money into the general fund instead. And as a significant source of revenue for that city, the building permit fees were still redirected to remodel the city hall. Most recent data we have seen is that $250 million, and that is with a B, $250 million has been overcollected within the past 5 years. That is an unaudited figure. There are irregularities on the data on all sides, but that's the best estimate we have just looking at the data provided by municipalities. And other by a few exceptions for something like a simple door replacement, maybe roofing or re-siding, window replacement, building permit fees must currently be based on valuation. Now, this valuation is what we like to call the sticks, bricks, and labor. It is just simply the home itself. It's not the land, the lots. And so there is going to be a difference between the structure valuation as well as the final sales price to the home. So you expect to see across the region a relatively consistent valuation basis when it comes to these permits. What we've seen is particularly looking at the same home built by the same builder across the Twin Cities Metro is that there's wide variances in what one model costs in one city and then that same model costs in another. And that is because the valuation is routinely changed. Now, I reviewed over 1,800 building permits about 2 years ago just to look over recent data that I was to get. And this data did look at what was provided to the building official who determines the valuation by the home builder, and then what was then provided back to the builder as the accepted valuation. In 8.07% of the permits I reviewed, the permits were lowered. About 20% of the time it was unchanged, but in 72.65% of the time, the valuation was increased. The average valuation change was about $55,000, or roughly 22.7% of the permit. But I would say this is not consistent across cities. Lino Lakes changed very few permits. In fact, only one increase. Victoria, though, 100% of the time was changing building permit costs. Average increase from what the cost the builder to build the home to what the building official determined was $200,000, a 70% increase. Shakopee was another outlier. What we've seen, though, is that when these valuations are increased, they increase the cost of the permit. This permit cost is paid for by that new home buyer. That can be zero if it's not changed. It could be several $100s, and that's just when it's based off valuation. So what this seeks to do is to change this system and get out of the guesswork and have a consistent basis where nobody has their thumb on the scale to change the building permit costs. There's other states who have examined other approaches. Valuation-based has kind of been the industry standard for quite some time. However, we have seen several states, including Texas, shift away from valuation-based permits and into square footage-based. Communities in Wisconsin right next door do as well. And as we are having a broader discussion about housing affordability and access, it's really important to talk about how every $1,000 you increase a home, it does price out about 2,100 home buyers out of the housing market in the Twin Cities. So if you are charging a $3,000 extra for a permit, as was the case in Corcoran, you're pricing out more than 6,000 potential home buyers. That places added stress on the existing home market and really is kind of behind this housing inflation we've been seeing. So as you're having a consideration today, just remember that this is trying to simplify the process and to really bring affordability back into the conversation as it comes to housing in Minnesota. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we will have Daniel Lightfoot. And as a reminder, members, we'll get through our testifiers, then we will get back to questions and comments. So testifiers, please stay close in case you're asked a question. Please identify yourself and you may begin.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members. For the record, my name is Daniel Lightfoot. I serve as a Senior Intergovernmental Relations Representative with the League of Minnesota Cities. The League represents the collective interests of 841 cities across the state of Minnesota. We appreciate the opportunity to share our comments and some concerns on Senate File 560. We have had some brief conversations with Senator Lucero on some of those concerns, as well as Senator Dornick. I'm also joined today by a colleague representing the building officials, the city building officials, who can certainly answer some more technical questions. If I need to phone a friend, he will provide some testimony from the building official perspective as well. The stated goal by Senator Lucero and the bill proponents is, as amended, and even in terms of the bill as introduced, that it will simplify building permits is, I think, something that we are continually working through and working on. But moving with the A2 amendment, and I appreciate that it was not adopted but just introduced for discussion, moving to a trip charge basis will not only make permit fees less certain for builders and remodelers, as fees would be forced to be collected after project completion via invoice, but it may also end up increasing permit fees for certain projects and would disproportionately and negatively impact homeowners, builders, and certainly remodelers in greater Minnesota, given the greater distance of travel with the mileage and trip fee basis. As Mr. Erickson pointed out, current building permits for all construction are based on valuation, and this is an important proxy from a fee-for-service standpoint because it factors in complexity. A more complex project of the same square footage that requires additional inspection services would necessitate a higher fee, given that there are more inspections and considerations for that project. If you took a 4,000 square foot pole barn and a 4,000 square foot single-family owner-occupied house with 3 bathrooms, the inspection and review process for that home is going to look a lot different and be more intense and provide additional service than that pole barn. The fees in current Minnesota rule, as also Mr. Erickson pointed out, are required in Minnesota rule to be fair, reasonable, and proportionate to the actual cost of the service for which the fee is imposed. And there is recourse if a developer thinks that a fee is too high. It can be appealed, and that project can continue as if the fee was paid while the Department of Labor and Industries addresses the issue. After that valuation is determined, and I think it's important to point out that the developer gets the first crack at determining the valuation of a project. And as Mr. Erickson pointed out, there are often times where that valuation determined by a developer is far too low for any reasonable valuation of that project. And so a building official will work with that developer to come up with a reasonable valuation to establish that fee as it pertains to a city's fee schedule. After that valuation is determined, the fee is paid for the building permit, and the review and inspection can take place. And the existing model means that there are not any additional fees for re-inspections or questions from builders or remodelers on code compliance that could result in additional visits from a code official. The current model allows us to respond to questions and do re-inspections to keep buildings safe without charging more fees, where the A2 amendment could result in higher fees because a reinspection would result in additional trip charges, it would result in additional mileage-based fees, et cetera. And I think it's also important to point out that more than just the inspection itself on that property goes into the consideration for the building permit fee. There's equipment, staff time for permit processing, plan review, scheduling, overhead costs that go along with running a building department to provide, obviously, this important service to residents, which is keeping buildings safe and making sure that they are built to code. The claims that cities are massively charging for building permit fees needs to be taken with a huge grain of salt. If you look at the municipal fee reporting statements from the Department of Labor and Industries, you can't just look at the building permit fee and inspection itself. There are, again, other related expenditures and expenses on that form that identifies city expenses in all other areas that are inclusive of the permitting and inspections review process. More goes into this process than simply the inspection itself. I want to point out that the bill as originally introduced is very close to language that the League of Minnesota Cities, Housing First, and other stakeholders worked through during the Department of Labor and Industries Technical Advisory Group on this issue. If the goal is to address some standardization in terms of how we determine valuation, there is a way to do that, and there is language that we have come up with to try and address that piece. Again, it is very close to the bill as introduced, where the Department of Labor and Industries would establish a cost per square foot methodology that we would argue shouldn't be uniform because there are different valuations based on where something is being built. Valuation in Bloomington is going to look a lot different than the valuation in Badette. But that could establish a uniform standard of what the valuation could be if it was $100 per square foot and you had 1,000 square feet. The valuation could be sort of predetermined. However, you could still base that on the valuation-based methodology, where a city could then set its own fee schedule to ensure that we are recovering our costs for this process so that we don't have to go to the property tax base to recoup those costs. We do look forward to working with Senator Lucero and this committee and, of course, the Housing Committee on this issue, and would like to point out that building more housing is absolutely a shared goal of cities across the state. We look forward to continuing to work with our developer partners to ensure that happens. I do want to point out one more thing. The segregation of funds, it's my understanding that the guidance from the department wasn't that funds shouldn't go into the general fund or couldn't go into the general fund because they do now. It's just that they couldn't be used to raise revenue, and that is not what is taking place. The funds going into the general fund mean that all of the other departments in a city that are involved with this process, can be accounted for in that fee. If we went to a segregated fund model, it would generally require a city to establish some type of chargeback methodology that would be incredibly cumbersome to track and change, where we would have to charge back from other departments, engineering, fire, other departments in the inspections process. So again, appreciate the opportunity to comment today, and I think there is a way we can continue to address this issue without completely overhauling and changing and turning on its head how we do permitting and inspections now. And I'm happy to stand for questions as well, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. We have one more testifier on the list. That is Brian Hoffman. Please identify yourself for the record, and you may begin.
Certainly. Good afternoon, Chair and members. My name is Brian Hoffman. I serve as a board member for the Association of Minnesota Building Officials. I've also worked as a building official in various communities for many years. And the main concern that was raised by code officials was probably the amendment language. And I know there's been a lot of talk. I've been in the chambers here before in past years as we've talked about how do we come up with a reasonable, transparent system for collecting fees. And it is a fee for service. I want to step back for just a moment if I can and share with you that, in a typical suburban Twin Cities suburb, there might be 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 permits issued in a year. Might have 20,000 people contacts between, say, 8 or 10 inspectors in the community, homeowners, contractors, architects, business owners. And we're often talking about new home permits, and I agree that is important, and the cost of housing is worth our consideration and evaluation of how this is addressed. And most of the permits in most cities are not new homes. Somebody might be wanting to finish a basement, and they have no idea, so they call up the city inspection department and ask. Inspectors go out and meet with them. It's called consultations. It's called trying to help people do it right. It's really not a regulatory job. I know a lot of people say it's code enforcement. Personally, I always find that a little bit misleading. It's really, if you can help and educate people and help give them answers and meet with them so that they do the job right, it makes it really easy, because the best thing you can do is say, congrats, you did a great job building this house or putting the basement in. And so when we're doing this, it's not about trip charges. It would just be horrendous to have to go out and tell somebody who you stop by their house to talk with them about their deck or whatever, that now they're going to have a trip charge to pay. The idea of basically when you're working for local government is the council expects it, the city managers expect it, you go out and you help people. You're members, of the city organization, and we're there to help the community. So there's no way that a trip charge, hourly rates like that really fit into any type of model of quality responsive service. The valuation model for permits, yes, a few places in the country have changed it, but it's still the primary method of calculating building permit fees. On any specific project, it may not be exact. However, when you look at everything from that basement remodel through a house, through a commercial building, through an apartment complex that might be $40 million, it's a way that through this assortment of work, the revenue is there to cover basically the services provided. I'm fairly familiar with city finances in my position. I'm aware of the accounting. An internal chargeback accounting system is monotonous. It's very cumbersome. It would actually increase costs with trying to do that. Cities don't operate with an internal chargeback system. They're an organization functioning. And I think by basically looking at the revenue and the total cost of expenditures, it can give you a pretty good idea of fee for service. I think that sort of sums it up. I just wanted to share our perspective on this. The amendment language is very troublesome. However, the idea of having a consistent valuation for a building could go a long way for consistency and transparency. For example, a 1,000 square foot building, if the value was, the typical 1,000 square foot building is $200,000, that building basically could be $200,000. And a builder could say, what's the permit fee? And you put that value in and you would know what your fee is. We do have, and not everybody, and probably the majority, but sometimes the valuation submitted by people is totally out of the range of realm, for whatever reason. And it does leave the inspector and building official up to trying to figure out what is the value. And some cities adopted ICC tables from years ago. Others are trying to use some other current information. And so it can be all over with what is the value of a project. And so having that consistency, would be a value. And we could see that in the TAG group actually came up with a recommendation where Minnesota DOI would come up with that square foot valuation. Many permit costs from city to city are really similar. About 4 years ago, we compared a lot of cities. Permit fees were within 10 or 15%, i.e. on a $200,000 building, the permit fee was really close. But it's that valuation change which can cause a fluctuation. So with that, thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any other members here, or folks here who would like to come up and testify on Senate File 560? If not, we will go to some questions. I have a number, but I'll let some other members go first. If anyone, otherwise I could start if I don't see hands. Senator Gruenhagen.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, if Nick Erickson would come forward. Hi, Nick. I appreciated your testimony. You heard some of the concerns, and yet, if I remember right, you referenced that other states have gone to a square footage charge on, as far as the permit is concerned. I think you mentioned Texas, if I remember right. Do you know why they did, or how that's working, and address some of the concerns that was brought up by Mr. Lightfoot?
Mr. Erickson.
Mr. Chair, Senator Gruenhagen, great question. Yeah, so with the code, Minnesota is unique, and we're one of a dozen or so states that has a statewide building code. It's critically important for affordability. That was enacted 50 years ago because inconsistent, ever-changing building codes across different cities really were wreaking havoc in the construction industry. So we've long had a statewide building code. Not every state does. So in these states that are either local adoption or hybrid state and local, they all do stuff differently. Texas is one that does do, that recently did their change. I think Wisconsin's long done this, at least as far as my research. There's no state law requiring either approach in Wisconsin because they're both permissible. Texas did change. There are some constitutional issues in the state of Texas which necessitated that change. I'm not. It's hard enough keeping up with all the laws of Minnesota. I don't know the specifics of Texas, but I do know that was the reason that Texas did enact it is they were seeing very consistent challenges with valuation numbers, not dissimilar to what we're seeing here. I have a couple home builder friends in Texas that have been we're working on this topic at the same time we started this discussion here in Minnesota. And really, to your second question, Mr. Lightfoot's concerns, I think there might be some confusion. This bill is only for 1- and 2-family dwellings. It's not for a pole barn. I don't know if he's got a different copy of the bill than me, but this is not for anything other than, single-family housing. So there's no reason to bring a pole barn into this discussion. So.
Senator Gruenhagen.
Well, okay, thank you. Thanks for that response. Yeah, there seems like between the testifiers of concern and the more advocates, it seems like there can be some peace in the valley someplace. So I hope you guys, you gentlemen, continue to work together to come up with a solution. The hard part, you don't want to usurp local control, but I will give you one instance that I was familiar with. It happened to be a customer of mine, and they had some land in the 7-county metro area and some land outside the 7-county metro area. And this was several years ago. They said if they would have built their new house for retirement 100 feet into the 7-county metro area, the permit was like $10,000, $12,000, probably be more today. If they stayed outside the 7-county metro area, it'd be like $2,000. So guess what they did? They decided to build outside the 7-county metro area. So that does seem, there's got to be other drivers at work here of the Met Council, something that's driving these prices. I mean, there's just no disparity. I mean, the disparity is ridiculous right on the border there. So to the degree that we can provide some guidelines, again, you hate to usurp local control in terms of charges, but it does sound like we should have some simplification someplace, and maybe the other side of concerns is open to that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Hoffman, would you return for a couple of questions, please? Thank you very much. And again, I know, as was mentioned, the bill is pretty specific for some housing, but I think there is a broader discussion as well just around general permitting. One of the things you talked about, the trip charge idea as not being one that you think is a good model. If someone is doing a basement remodel or if someone is doing a house, do you have a general idea of how many trips an inspector would typically take for one of those projects?
Well, Chair, it actually does vary quite a bit. You know, a house, no, when you're talking about building say a new structure, you've got building, plumbing, mechanical, electrical inspections, and they may be a dozen inspections if everything goes right. Many times there's follow-ups, or an inspector would go out to a site and it's not ready, so they have to come back a few hours later, like pouring a footing for concrete. So yeah, you can have sort of a base number of inspections on something like a new home, but the actual number can vary quite a bit. Additions, remodels, quite often you get into a project and things are discovered, so it's not so easy to say how many inspections. It's not a defined number.
Thank you. So would you say that that variability of numbers comes because either the contractor or the homeowner who's doing the work has not done their due diligence to be prepared for that inspection?
Chair, it may be. It might also be very valid questions about how it's progressing, what could be done, are there issues? So there's a number of things. Sometimes it may be that we're called for an inspection, it's just done plain wrong, and yes, we need to come back for that. A lot of times it's very consultative. And
Well, thank you. As an electrical contractor, I will say the trip charge basis, the Department of Labor uses that quite often for our permits. A brand new home is based on 3 trips. You can typically say it's done in 3 trips. You are correct. If I do not do it right and something fails, another trip has to happen. I get charged for that because I made a mistake. I think that is something that most everybody understands, and I think we can, it's not just electrical inspections that we can determine a pretty close number of as to how many inspection trips would have to happen for a certain type of project. So the statement was made earlier that you couldn't charge anything until the whole project is complete because we wouldn't know how many trips there would be. I think that's a pretty poor and inaccurate statement. We can pretty much know a very close estimate as to how many it should take if it's done correctly, and then surcharges or extra charges can be added when mistakes are made, thus making new trips necessary. So I think it's a very one-sided look at things to just dismiss trip charges as an option. Another, and being someone who's been in this position before, we talked a little bit about valuations and trying to, believing that that is a good method for doing it. I'm wondering, do you have situations where you would look at the valuation of the project costing more because of the time frames that are put on it that would require overtime, off typical hours that would require excess labor because you're working the night shift? Is that taken into account as opposed to if it was all done during normal hours where labor costs are not higher, so that you're doing the same project, but this one has a higher valuation because of the time frame, not because of what's actually being done?
Mr. Chair, from the city's perspective, it wouldn't matter when the contractor is building it for their labor. If the city employee was to be going out after the fact, that would be a separate charge for after-hours inspections. We do a fairly wide window from 7:30 to 4:30 with people working different hours, but if it's outside of that, there'd be a different charge for city responding.
So I'll ask the question a little differently, I guess, to get at what I'm going for. If I'm a contractor building this house here and it can be all done in standard hours, and so then you're looking at it and you're, as you're coming up with the cost of the project, you determine what that valuation is. but another contractor building the exact same house is under other constraints that's going to require overtime or other charges. So that valuation, when you look at the contract, is higher. Is that what you're basing your fee off of, or do you take that into account so that we're only charging the permit fee based off the valuation as if it was all standard time hours?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. I understand that now. I think better. We base it on the value that the contractor places on the permit application. They know what the valuation is. It is looked at to make sure it's sort of within the realm of what other similar permits are. We don't have a specific number that we go off of, so it is what's submitted. Now, if a large project has a very, very low value, it raises the question, why is the value so low? And then that leads to a discussion. As a city, we don't just change value, we ask the contractor to basically justify and verify it.
Okay, thank you. So I appreciate that. I don't have any more questions, but I also want to hold up an example for folks to understand. This is a personal example of what I encountered last summer around electrical permits. I had 2 projects, both school remodel, doing the HVAC controls. One was about an $80,000 project, and it was in a jurisdiction covered by a state electrical inspector. The other was a $50,000 project in a municipality that had taken over the electrical inspections. When I go online and filled out a form through the Department of Labor, pay my fee, and in 10 minutes I have my electrical permit in hand for the job in the state jurisdiction for $110. When I went online to do the same for the city that had taken it over, the first thing I see is you must submit your plans for review. So now I have to go through a complete process to get the information I receive from whom I'm subcontracted under and turn all those plans into the city, which I'm not exactly sure what they're reviewing, because I'm not sure if they're going to call the engineers from training and say you didn't engineer this right, you have to change it. So I'm not 100% sure what they're reviewing. But 3 weeks later, I'm told I have my permit in hand if I pay a $545 fee, because it was based off the valuation of the contract, not the number of trips that the inspector would either take or by the number of devices that I was installing. That's how the state permits would go. If the number of devices you're installing don't reach a certain mark, but you would think you're going to make 3 trips, then this is the price of the permit. If the number of devices are higher, then you go by that. So that's where I see this problem using a valuation-based form, because it really isn't looking into the type of the contract, because especially in that one, it never considered if I was working overtime and had that bid into my project. It just wanted to know what the contract price was for the job. And that's a question I think needs to be asked as we move on to housing and stuff too. How many times is it actually valuation where you're sitting and asking what's the actual value, or where they're asking, well, what's the contract figure? Because if that's all we're asking is the contract figure, we're not really getting there. We're not being true. But I also question, how can the smaller project cost 5 times for that permit? So that's just something I think members should think about. That's why I don't know if this bill is the exact one, but this is a discussion that we absolutely have to be having, because we see such a wide variety of these inspection fees that are out there. And it's something I hear from my friends within the industry, especially general contractors, that when they go from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, they just have no idea what they're going to be up against if they're moving into a new one they've never worked in before. So I appreciate the fact that this bill is here, and I've probably said enough. So if there are other members who would like to say something, Senator Liskey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, Would Mr. Lightfoot come to the table? Thank you, Mr. Lightfoot. I guess my question on these projects, after listening to Senator Rarick talking about how the project's pricing can be different and how those things can change, let's just say we have an instance where I have to replace my furnace in my house. It's a remodeling project. It requires a permit pull from the city that I live in. I have a choice between a 70%, 80%, 90%, whatever level furnace of efficiency, and obviously there's massive price differences as you climb the efficiency level. If we stay on a valuation-based process, the furnace itself is going to occupy the same amount of space. It's going to take generally the same amount of labor to install. How would that, I mean, this might address the fact that my permit would cost more because of the valuation base. Can you answer why you're arguing for a valuation-based project when something like that could be going on?
Mr. Lightfoot.
Mr. Chair, Senator Liskey, thank you for the question. And just to be clear, I do have the correct bill. Maybe my comparison on the pole barn was a little overly simplistic. But to your question, I mean, the bill does address new 1- and 2-family dwelling units, and so I don't know if your example of kind of the sort of the project kind of remodel piece, and perhaps it would make sense for somebody that does inspections every day to answer that question, Senator Liskey. So, Mr. Chair, if I may phone a friend to my colleague, Mr. Hoffman, just because I'm not the one doing the inspections, but it's a valid question.
Mr. Hoffman.
Thank you. It is a valid question. A good one. Most cities that I'm aware of use flat rate permits for things like residential furnaces, water heaters, that kind of thing, because you're correct, the valuation can be all over, and it's really based on just a fee. It might be $85 or whatever, and it covers a visit for the inspector. Usually they're fairly quick inspections. And, but it varies from city to city.
Senator Liskey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for answering that question. It brings me right into the next question, which is now we have a valuation of an overall total project. We are now deciding on a new home in which we've chosen to, again, pick bigger, more expensive products that are in the house. And that's kind of the argument, you're kind of making the argument for the square footage-based project by saying what you just said. Because what ends up happening is I select higher cost items to go into my house. My build is now more expensive than my neighbor's build, but the square footage of our houses are the same. It changes the value of the project. So I think you kind of made that argument for us just now as to why we should be having this discussion and why this square footage based model might be something we really should take into account.
Is that a question, or would either of you wish to respond?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, if I may, and I think the language that I referred to from the technical advisory group did address that very question. I think if the question is, you know, there is some slight variation between valuations being determined in consultation with the developer and the building official between jurisdictions, we could have a system that sort of splits the difference between having a determined valuation based on a cost per square foot methodology that would be developed by the Department of Labor and Industries, while still allowing the valuation-based methodology based on that cost per square foot to factor into the fee schedule itself, so that we're not oversimplifying a very relatively basic home with only one bathroom and a more complex home of the same square footage with more than 1 or 2 or 3 bathrooms, where that inspection process and the cost to a city and the inspections department is going to be vastly different. Making those permits the exact same cost means that we're not going to be able to recoup all of the expenses that incurred by the building official and the city itself from that process on that more complex building. But I think, to your point, I do think that the language that we've worked on already could address that very question and not sort of totally turn this process completely on its head at the expense of taxpayers in the city.
Senator Liskey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I guess what I'm hearing is, yes, the bill needs work. I think we all might agree on that. Even the authors have kind of said, hey, let's really think this through and flesh this out. And I look forward to seeing what it turns into. But I think that is something that we definitely need to own that it is, the system we have currently is not working. Maybe this isn't the right answer right here, but we definitely need to address it. Because like I said, my neighbors could have a project that is basically the same project, but because they've chosen A, cheaper, or B, more expensive items, it changes the cost of those projects. And so something we definitely need to consider. So thank you.
Senator Pratt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't know if I have any questions for our testifiers. I am glad to see that we're not talking about pole barns, because in the original bill, when I saw "and accessory buildings," that's exactly what I was thinking. Are we charging a house on Prior Lake the same amount that we're charging a pole barn in Spring Lake Township? So I'm glad to see that. I'm glad to see that there's some discussion around not having a statewide mandated cap on these fees. You know, one of the things you've heard me say often is one size fits all usually doesn't fit anybody, and that's my fear when we talk about that. And Senator Grugang is exactly right. We've got to be very careful about usurping the authority of our local communities. There are some good things in this bill, but when we look at housing, we have to, you know, and I've talked to my builders, there are three things that drive the cost of housing. Well, actually four things. It's, and the first three are land, lumber, and labor. Fees, my builders talk about the high fees, but there are three big drivers are land, labor, and lumber. And just as an example, members, I went back and looked. In January 2022, lumber was $1,200 per 1,000 board feet. In January 2024, it was down to $576 per board feet, and yet we've not seen a decrease in housing costs, which leads me to the fourth piece, which it's also driven by demand. How many times have we heard, you know, there becomes a bidding war over a home because of lack of supply. That's just basic economics. So I'm not expecting to see major affordability moves in housing if we cut these fees. I agree that they seem rather excessive at times, and from my own experiences, I remember complaining when I was finishing my basement, and the city, you know, all I was doing was putting in a bedroom. I wasn't even rewiring the darn thing. But I ended up paying a couple of $1,000s in fees on just adding a bedroom. The things I do like about this bill, right, is we need to be transparent on the costs that are driving what these permit fees are. And I think you touched on that a little bit, looking at the trip fee. I mean, if inspection is more complicated, it probably should have a larger cost. I think transparency on the fees, having those posted to the website, I think is a really good idea. And I do like the suggestion of having them set aside in dedicated funds. You know, I was looking at the road fees that got struck down because one of our municipalities was misusing those road development fees for other uses. And, you know, if those fees get put into expanding infrastructure for a growing community like we have down in Scott County, it makes perfect sense. But I think there's what I'm saying is I think there are some interesting concepts in this. I also think we need to be very, very careful. It's not a bill that I could support with an approval vote, but I'll support moving it to the next committee so that we can continue the conversation.
Thank you, Senator Pratt. And I think one of the other pieces you mentioned that, you know, about the fees being excessive, I think what came to my mind as you were saying that too about transparency, it helps keep them from what some people just believe them to be as arbitrary as well. So, Senator Pappas, were you?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You read my mind. I was thinking about making a comment on something that when Senator Pratt brought up the issue of lumber, I just kind of started worrying about things in the future. Like, I believe in Minnesota, we get most of our lumber from Canada. And so tariffs on Canadian products could exacerbate our housing crisis problem as cost of supplies go up. So I'm hoping that we will be able to, figure out something that we can do around the permitting fees as a little bit of a contribution to this problem. But I'm not hopeful that we have bigger problems facing us. So thank you.
Senator Marty.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I missed the first 5 minutes where you were deciding. I gather you haven't decided you want the original bill or the A2 amendment because they're totally separate concepts. I was just I think I agree with Senator Pratt that there may be a problem here and we got to try and address it. And I'm glad I'm not the one trying to negotiate how to do it. And I was just curious, when we're talking about square footage, I keep thinking, I don't know how, if your plan is putting in a basement access window or a sliding door to a porch or something, I mean, there's not really, are we talking 5 square feet for an access window or something? I don't know how one would do that. And I also think, obviously, new construction's a lot, remodeling, a picture of the complexity just there is huge. So I very much agree it's an issue worth looking into, and I'm glad I'm not the one trying to figure it out, but it's a lot more complex than it looks at first. And I think transparency would help so that everybody has a sense of what's happening. And I think that helps make the city councils be a little more, the ones who are using it as a revenue generating thing, I think it may help them address that, because if you can just say, look, what we're charging in fees for whatever kind of thing, and a neighboring community is doing half that, make it obvious what's happening. So I think that might be a step.
Thank you, Senator Marty. And yes, apologize, I think we mentioned earlier, you missed. We have Senate File 560 in front of us. We have the amendment just to be part of the discussion, and the intention today in committee is to move this to housing without recommendation because those two co-chairs want to have the bill in their jurisdiction. And yes, without the amendment added. So any other comments from members, questions? Senator McEwen.
Thanks. I just have, just as long as before we pass this over to housing to work on, one of the issues that I'm thinking about as we hear this debate is changing the structure seems to me to go against a sort of core value that I have, and that is that if a project, if there's more going into it, more resources, more wealth, more richesse going into it, there would presumably be more ability to be able to pay a higher fee for it. So to that extent, one of the things that I'm a little bit worried about with these changes is having a situation where somebody who is building a very modest home and has a certain amount of square feet to it, there might be a very wealthy person building that same square foot home, but it has all the bells and whistles. It is a very wealthy, extravagant home. And what I like about the current system that we have is it's sort of the understanding of ability to pay is sort of built into the current scheme. And I wouldn't want to see that fall away for a simplification of like a flat fee type scenario where, the working stiff who can barely afford to do this build is paying the same amount that some millionaire is paying for their sweet little cabin up in the woods or something. So I think in some ways these differentials according to valuation are good. And I hope that won't just fall away in the discussion of some of these efficiency issues and some of the arbitrariness that people are concerned about, which does resonate with me. Anyway, I just wanted to raise it because it is something that I'll be watching for. Thanks.
Thank you, Senator McEwen. And I guess as you brought that up, it kind of goes back to what I mentioned, where I think maybe somewhere in the discussion would be similar to how electrical permits are run through the state, where I would go through a formula that's showing, okay, I've got a 400 amp service that's going in, I have 2 sub-feeders going in, I anticipate this many circuits. It comes up with a calculation as to what that would be my fee. And then it anticipates how many inspection trips, that would be this much. I pay the larger of the 2. So if I'm not putting a lot in, but I'm still going to have 3 trips, I have to go with the higher, with the trip charge, because that's higher. But if I'm spending a whole lot and I'm putting a lot of electrical devices in to a smaller home, I then trigger the higher price based on that. And so that's what I think we could get at with the square footage, but you're also saying, well, if this square footage only has 1 bathroom and a kitchen, that's going to trigger the trip charges, as opposed to a same square footage that has 2.5 baths, a kitchen, 2 laundry rooms. That could trigger the fee based on what's in it type of thing. So I think hopefully those will be part of the discussions as this moves forward, and I'm not seeing any other hands, so Senator Dornick, if you'd like to make some comments before we act on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and it's just really nice to hear great questions, great discussion, and the committee process works, voices of all, to be able to work through these problems. And I want to thank my, well, first the author, Senator Lucero, and then the co-authors, Dreheim and Senator Hoffman, and then I'm on it too. But the goals are the same. We see there's a housing shortage. We want to make home ownership more affordable, and we want to come to ideas how we do that. And this is just one. As it said, there's others that we're going to look for, and working to find the solution together to accomplish with the stakeholders, with us, to come to that consensus, peace and valley, like Senator Gruenhagen said. The other thing was, the uniform, somehow to come up with a uniform with some nuances probably. Transparency was mentioned, fairness, reasonable cost. So we have the same goals, just how do we navigate through that? And I'm looking forward to this going to housing, and Senator Lucero working together over there, and I'll continue to work with him. And I also want to just thank the testifiers for their information, and we appreciate them. Again, having their voice here is very important. So I just close with, again, thanks for the discussion. It was good. And this bill needs some work, but again, the goals are the same for each and every one of us here that I heard. So with that, I thank the members for the time, and Mr. Chair.
So Senator Dornick, would you like to move that Senate File 560 pass and be re-referred without recommendation to the Housing and Homelessness Prevention Committee?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
On that motion, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. Motion passes.
So we have one more item on the agenda. We're going to have the review of the committee budget. Ms. Bursch, Senate Financial Analyst, if you would be so kind to give us that information, we'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Committee members, I'm still fairly new to the Senate. I've been here for about a month and a half and haven't yet worked directly with some of you, so I'll reintroduce myself. My name is Megan Bursch. And I'm the fiscal analyst with Senate Council Research and Fiscal Analysis, supporting the Labor Committee. Today, I'm going to walk you through a high-level summary of the November 2024 forecast, what we consider the base for this year's budgetary decision-making. In your packet, you should have a tracking spreadsheet titled November 2024 Forecast Base Summary in the upper left-hand corner. I'm going to focus on columns A through F, which represent the current and budget biennia. The planning biennium is also shown in columns G through I, so you can see what is currently in the base of the tails, but it's more a reference than anything else right now. And as a reminder, all numbers are in thousands of dollars. You're probably very familiar with this at this point, but I'll just repeat that the labor budget jurisdiction includes the Department of Labor and Industry, the Board of Mediation Services, the Public Employment Relations Board, and the Workers' Compensation Court of Appeals. So we'll review financial information for each of those agencies, starting with the Department of Labor and Industry on line 9. So DLI has by far the largest and most complex agency budget in this committee's jurisdiction, with total all funds expenditures of $266,884,000 in the current 24-25 biennium, and a base of $260,799,000 in the 26-27 biennium. Major funds in DLI include the General Fund, Construction Code Fund, Workers' Compensation Fund, and Workforce Development Fund. I think something that's important to be aware of here is that a little over 1/3 of all funds totals are direct appropriations, which means that the authority to spend specific amounts was granted in session law at some point in the last 2 years. While a little under 2/3 of those totals are statutory and open appropriations, which means the authority to spend resources is codified in state statute. So I think that's just something to be aware of, the different mechanisms through which DLI receives their funding. So starting with direct appropriations, DLI has expenditures of $99,021,000 in the current 24-25 biennium, and a base of $93,663,000 for the 26-27 biennium. Of that, $17,691,000 is in the general fund in 24-25, and $14,443,000 is in the general fund in 26-27. The biggest source for DLI direct appropriations is the Workers' Compensation Fund. And then moving down to DLI's statutory and open appropriations, starting on line 17, DLI has expenditures of $167,863,000 in the current 24-25 biennium, and forecasted expenditures of $167,136,000 in the 26-27 biennium, none of which is in the general fund. The biggest source for DLI statutory and open appropriations is the Construction Code Fund. So moving on to the Bureau of Mediation Services, starting on line 23. BMS's budget is made up entirely of direct appropriations from the general fund, with general fund expenditures of $5,955,000 in the current 24-25 biennium, and a base of $6,048,000 for the 26-27 biennium. The Public Employment Relations Board is typically tracked as a line item of the Bureau of Mediation Services budget, and that's where you'll find it in other spreadsheets if you're looking for it. It's a line item in BMS, but I pulled it out as its own section starting on line 27 for the purposes of this overview, since it's identified independently in the labor budget jurisdiction summary. But like BMS, PERB's budget is made up entirely of direct appropriations from the general fund. PERB has general fund expenditures of $1.5 million in the current 24-25 biennium, and a base of $1,502,000 in the 26-27 biennium. Last but not least, we have the Workers' Compensation Court of Appeals budget starting on line 31. And that's made up entirely of direct appropriations from the Workers' Compensation Fund. This agency has expenditures of $5,146,000 in the current 24-25 biennium, and a base of $5,126,000 for the 26-27 biennium. Again, all from the Workers' Compensation Fund. So coming back up to the top of the spreadsheet to bring everything together here, the Labor Committee budget jurisdiction has total all funds expenditures of $279,485,000 in the current 24-25 biennium, and a base of $273,475,000 for the 26-27 biennium. And of that, $25,146,000 is in the general fund in 24-25, and $21,993,000 is in the general fund in 26, 27. Just to kind of wrap up here, I'll note that tracking spreadsheets that show the Labor Committee budget in greater detail are available on the SCRFA website. I actually just posted the one with the governor's budget recommendations there yesterday afternoon. So if you're looking for more information about a specific program or line item appropriation, you can either find it there, or you can, of course, always reach out to me with your questions, and I'll get that information to you. But otherwise, Mr. Chair, that concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Birch. Senator Pappas.
Thank you, and welcome, Ms. Birch. I was just wondering, though, usually when we look at the base budget, we also look to see if the governor has any change items. And are we doing that at a later date, or is that still part of the discussion today?
Ms. Birch.
It's not part of the discussion today. My understanding is that we will do an overview at a later date when the departments that have recommended new spending can come to present on those items.
All right, thank you.
Members, any other questions? Senator Gruenhagen.
Oh, I just have something afterwards that I just want to say before we adjourn, okay?
Okay.
Senator Pappas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. I just wanted to point out line 19, federal funds, and ask, I don't know if who might know in staff what these federal funds are used for, because we obviously are at risk of losing them.
Ms. Birch.
Or is that a question we should direct to Dolly? Okay. These, sorry, it used to be called Dolly. Now it's DLI.
Welcome, Mr. Moore. State name for the record.
Thank you, Chair Dornick. I am Josiah Moore. I'm the Legislative Director at the Department of Labor and Industry. And in response to the question about what federal funds DLI receives, the biggest chunk of those is for Minnesota OSHA, as we are a state plan state, so we receive federal funding. The state overmatches that, so we contribute a lot from the state side. Thank you. But yeah, the biggest chunk of our federal funding is to MinOSHA.
Senator Pratt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And, let me just say that, I've looked at the President's orders on grants, and if what Mr. Moore says is correct, that the federal funding is predominantly going to OSHA, then I see why we shouldn't have any problem keeping those funds coming in. We can make that clarification by the February 10th deadline. As long as it's not, what I read in the President's executive order was around those that were tied more to political agenda than they were the operation. So I don't share my colleagues' concern over this. I think we'll be fine. But Mr. Moore, I was curious about the Workforce Development Fund, why we're spending over $13 million a biennium the WDF.
Mr. Moore.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for that question. The Workforce Development Fund supports a variety of programs at DLI. We have youth skills training that's funded by that, the dual training pipeline program. Registered apprenticeship is funded from the Workforce Development Fund in the base, and as well as the Labor Education and Advancement Program grants, which support registered apprentices in retaining registered apprentices of color, women, and Indigenous registered apprentices. And then the last area that the Workforce Development Fund supports is the prevailing wage unit at DLI.
Pretty good. Any other questions? Seeing none. Senator McEwen, do you have a motion?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do just have a very quick motion for our committee today. This pertains to the Workers' Compensation Court of Appeals. As you may recall, Judge Sean Quinn, we just had not received the official paperwork from the floor yet for the Labor Committee. At this time, we do have it in hand, and so we are ready to go ahead and include Judge Quinn in the recommendation. So, Mr. Chair, I move to recommend to the Senate that the appointment of Judge Sean M. Quinn to the Workers' Compensation Court of Appeals be confirmed.
Thank you, Thank you, Senator McEwen. So again, to renew the motion that Senator McEwen made, Judge Sean Quinn for the Workers' Compensation Court of Appeals. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Senator Gruenhagen, you said you had a final. We're done other than.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I just happen to have a constituent who's from my district stop in, and she actually works for a company in Sleepy Eye in regards to labor. And she gave me some written concerns. She's the bookkeeper at this business, and I'm just sharing this so that all of us, when we go back to our constituents, we do some checking with small and mid-sized businesses. She gave her notice. She's leaving this summer because she's not going to do this. But basically, she said that the earned sick and safe time applies to summer, and correct me if I'm wrong, but she said it's applying to the summer interns, on-the-job training students, and part-time employees not on the regular schedule. And she said it's just a nightmare to keep it straight, so she's quitting. And she said, she told them she has to get, they have to get somebody else. You know, maybe we can look at making a few modifications for small businesses in these areas. The other thing she brought out is that the unemployment tax used to be 0.10 for a very long time. This year it started at 0.40. Now it went up to 0.53. For this small mid-sized business, this is going to add $15,000 a year in additional cost to the company, and this is at a time while their sales and service are at a slump, and we are struggling to meet payroll. So I know a lot of these things were well-intended, but what I'm trying to tell you is this is the reality of what businesses are doing. This happens to be a business in Sleepy Eye. So they're on the verge of closing their doors, which isn't going to help their employees at all. And check in your own districts if this is what's happening, because I think regardless of our good intentions, at a certain point, we're crippling these small businesses, and I don't know how many of them are going to be able to keep their doors open. Last point I make, and I shared this last year, but I had in my insurance agency a very successful small to mid-sized business, and it was run by 3 brothers and a son-in-law. And they sat down with their accountant, and they figured out if they moved to South Dakota versus Minnesota, how much they would save in the next 10 to 12 years. According to the dad, who's kind of semi-retired, they would save $12 million, okay? So guess what? They sold their houses, they moved their business, all but one moved to South Dakota. So we're, at a certain point, we're chasing out the successful and we're drawing in the dependent. And I think that's a poor formula going forwards, and we need to give some of these small to mid-sized businesses a little relief. Just food for thought. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, members. Thank you, guests. This concludes our meeting. The Labor and Industry Committee is adjourned.